Hey, Irenicast listeners, before you start the show, we want to remind you about our next Intersections cohort coming up in February. We know that so often there are very few places to deconstruct and reconstruct with others in a safe and supportive environment. We believe that Intersections offers a space for you to come as you are and to offer what you can. We are hoping to lean into our adventuring imaginations together for 6 weeks to listen, to share, to heal, and to continue the journey forward together. We hope you will consider joining us. Our winter 2022 cohort is Thursdays, February 3rd through March 10th at 7 p.m. Pacific time on Zoom. Space is limited, so register today on our Intersections website, theintersections.space, or use the link in the show notes. Now, on to today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are Irenicast, a group of folks leaning into our progressive Christian imagination. I'm Jeff.
I'm Bonnie.
I'm Casey.
And this is Rajeev.
On the first and third Tuesday of every month,
we provoke conversations for shifting perspectives
on theology and culture.
Thank you for joining us. This week, this is our annual Christmas episode, so naturally we're going to be talking about virginity, as one does during the holidays. And for our segment, we're going to be doing a new one called Yuck or Yum, and basically we're going to defend something that we love that others might think are kind of gross. So that should be fun. Virginity. I've thought a lot about how I was going to start this conversation, and I don't know. But we'll start with just the basic. Is obviously we're talking virginity during a Christmas episode because the central narrative of the Christmas story is the virgin birth of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So I guess we can start with the basic question of why was it so important for the narrative to include Mary's virginity in the whole deal? Yeah, let's start there. Who wants to speak to that?
Well, I don't think in the original storytelling they're talking about Mary being a sexless person. That isn't how virginity in that context was understood. Virginity was about pureness, earnestness, like somebody who's venerated, bringing forth life that would do great things. I mean, that Mary is, in the storytelling, a very important archetype of women who bring forth leaders, prophets, saviors. And I don't think anyone in the ancient world thought that Mary was a non-sexual or not sexually active as a being. That's something us modern people in our idiocy decided to superimpose on a really beautiful characteristic that's much fuller than a simple act.
Bonnie, I'm curious. You gave a half nod, like a nod, like, that's sort of correct, but... So I'm curious if you would interpret that, please.
Well, I mean, from remembering my study of Christian history, and I'm not a Christian or Christian historian, I'm more of a theologian, but I think it was Augustine who came up with this idea that you put sin and sex together. Like the original sin of Adam and Eve in the garden even was somehow connected to Eve as a temptress, and then Adam as one who succumbed to Eve's temptation, and they had sex, and that was the original sin. And therefore, every sex act from there on was somehow connected to sinfulness. I think that's an oversimplification for sure. But yes, in that way, I think you're absolutely right. You know, what Rajeev said is true, that when the story originated, I had heard that the word for virgin, that's translated virgin in English, in Greek really means more like maiden, like unmarried one, not necessarily one who hadn't one who didn't have a sexuality, but one who was not part of a patriarchal household yet. So maybe in that way, the Savior's origin coming from not within a patriarchal household, but from within Mary's self is for sure a pagan archetype, like a Jungian archetype, for this new leader to be something wholly different.
Sojourner Truth really builds on that truth of the story, which is man had nothing to do with Jesus. Mary was an independent entity in conspiracy, in as it could be articulated, with God to bring forth something that the human race needed, because males already had their chance and couldn't do it. But, Jesus is male, blah, blah, blah. Boy, we're really getting off the topic. Sorry about that.
No, I think these are important things because we've all been given a very specific narrative on why Mary's virginity was important to the story. And I think that trying to piece together the different things that we've heard over the years that either confirm or contradict that are important, because it does, and I'm sure as the conversation goes on, it's going to be something that directly ties into purity culture, a woman's perceived role in the Christian church. I think it's important for us to kind of tackle all these myths and narratives and really kind of come to the heart of not necessarily the answer, because there's not an answer, right? Like we're trying to reflect, and settle into a progressive Christian view of these things and how we can look at those things without for us specifically, the baggage of evangelicalism, but even just the cultural baggage that goes along with that. Because to say that purity culture and a woman's role is regulated to evangelicalism and not America as a whole is not, is sidestepping and being ignorant of the world around us, I think.
Mm-hmm. I keep thinking of Inigo Montoya from Princess Bride. He's like, I don't think that word means what you think it means. And in this case, Mary's virginity is actually a very powerful construct, but it doesn't mean non-sexual at all. The idea of maiden is there, and that's a very powerful pro-woman place to hold in society, and then doing something great without patriarchy being part of her support structure.
Right. And I think that that's an important point. Like when the primary lens that I approach scripture from is a literary one. And I think that when you just look at the story structure of the Gospels and Mary's place in it and Joseph's lack of place in it, that says a lot about how Mary is supposed to be interpreted in the story as someone who has, even during the wedding, someone who has authority over the Savior of the world. And that's a really important part of that story. So therefore, it's not an accident that the story is placing Mary in a spot of importance that is not related to her virginity, but related to her existence as a woman in that particular setting of the world.
Yes. And that's the crime, right, of evangelical Christianity. And not just, but all of Christianities, a lot of Christianities across the world, and certainly in the United States, that place, Mary's place, was disempowered. And she was then portrayed as like a submissive, gentle, meek, mild person. But if you read the Gospel of Luke, which is really where the story comes from, she travels by herself, unmarried, to go see her cousin, Elizabeth. She draws support from other women in her life to, like the momentous occasion that is about to happen, the birth of the Savior, is all on her shoulders entirely. And so where does she go for support to help her shoulder that burden? It's to her sister cousin, who's also pregnant with a support in Jesus's life, John. and they find support from each other. And then, there's this Magnificat, which is a bold and powerful statement about her vision for the world, then embodied in Jesus, the Christ figure that's born from her body and God's spirit. That's the story. That's the literary interpretation of the story. To have that story turned in such a way, and it took a lot of work to turn that story into Mary being a submissive, meek, and mild servant of patriarchal structure. Even a cursory read of it tells you that that's not the case at all.
And if you're not familiar with the Magnificat, it's the most revolutionary passage in the Bible. And just Google it, read it, and that's Mary.
It's left out of most Christian church liturgies, even though Christmas liturgies and Christmas services, even though it is one of the most powerful Christmas passages in the Bible.
Yeah, I think that for me, it speaks to this whole thing around like God knowing if you want to get something done, you have a woman do it. You partner with a woman because she'll actually get stuff done. She knows the way. This is like step one, the best example. But I was going to go to the Magnificat also. Mary's vision for the world, partnering with God, and its manifestation is Jesus, right? I mean, there is nothing more powerful and profound than that. And what is so frustrating about this story and so frustrating about Christianity is that it does to the story what it does to women in general. It strips them of their voice, their agency, and leaves them to be docile and only a character in the story and not the central theme. And so I think that this whole idea around virginity speaks to all of the issues of patriarchy around power and agency and the silencing of other voices other than men. It's a shame because this story is actually about women's empowerment. And if you really want to see it get done in the world and done well, have a woman do it, honey.
Right. And piggybacking off the Magnificat specifically, like it is not something that is brand new either. It is borrowing from the Hebrew scripture tradition of the Song of Hannah, which that story in particular, you read that it is a challenging and a usurping of, institutional leadership, dismissing women and how that can prevent a good leader from rising up. And I think that there's a lot there. I think a lot of people, particularly from the more right-leaning, they tend to really dismiss and, the patriarchy becomes a trigger word for them. But, I mean, the literary structure of this and the literary allusions to the Hebrew scriptures are undeniable that this is the central theme of what is trying to be communicated through this story and this poem.
Yes. And that virginity, that in the story, was an inspiration for women, at least European women in the Middle Ages, to refuse to get married. They remained virgins because if you listen to the last episode, you heard something about kibbles and bits. So in this episode, we are going to talk about menstruation. A menstruating woman who is able to provide children for a patriarchal household has to be controlled, has to be owned, has to be property. And for these women to say, oh no, I'm going to remain a virgin. I'm going to be married to Christ. That was an act of resistance and revolution that, they were martyred. They had their breasts cut off in the public square, according to the stories, because they couldn't, the powers that be could not abide that. Women making up their own decisions about what was going to happen with their bodies. On the one side, we can look at the story and say there's so much shame in the story because of the virginity of Mary and attach that to purity culture. But if we really want to liberate the story, I think we have to see how virginity in the story and the way it played out even in Christian history could be, in a patriarchal structure, an act of empowerment. And so that we don't perpetuate, in the storytelling, perpetuate the same patriarchy by bashing the story. It's an interesting study, actually, to look into the virgin martyrs of the Middle Ages and the kinds of things that they went through. Just who they were as people were diminished, or they tried to diminish it in the public square. How much resolve and courage they had to resist the institution of marriage. That's amazing. And to do it in the name of Christianity, in the name of Christ, which is the reason why I can be a Christian as a woman, because I really think that fundamentally at its core, it's a liberative religion and tradition. It's just been so co-opted and so manipulated to serve powers that are, frankly, in my mind anyways, demonic and evil powers. But at its core, at its heart, is Mary, who's pregnant with this new vision. And that new vision includes me as a woman.
Can we stop the episode here? I mean, for real. That is the truth. That Mary is pregnant with a new vision. And that vision is a liberation for all people, right? The expansion of love in the world that does not see any boxes, any walls set, right? But all things brought down so that we are on an equal playing field, that we might see one another and love each other and work for a brighter future. These are the causes that, you're right, Bonnie, that make me still sometimes chokingly say I'm a Christian, gagging, but it's true. Because of Mary's vision, because of her purpose. That's beautiful.
And Jesus didn't get married.
That's right.
And we don't know exactly what that's about. We certainly know it was not part of what was expected of him as a man,
people
a
get
Jewish
mad.
man.
People get mad, but he did hang out with 12 men, honey.
He did.
That wedding at Cana, you better check it out.
Right.
Who's getting married at that wedding at Cana? But that's a whole nother thing.
He did not himself enter into a patriarchal relationship.
That's right.
Which was the culture of his time, and that would have been expected of him. Most of the mothers would have assumed that their son would be married and begin to have children. Apparently, Mary wasn't pushing that on him.
That's right. We never read any of that, right?
Right. So he was also in many ways enacting this radical liberation by refusing to participate in particular structures. And I know that some of that is passed on, we see evidence of it in Paul's writings and in other early Christian writings about not being part of this institution, part of this familial institution, that it's better to not participate in it. And there's reasons that are listed for why it's good or why it's not good. But it's interesting to me. It's interesting to me that in the early church, they lived differently than the culture around them when it comes to those patriarchal systems.
Well, the act of sex itself, in order for it to be anything other than sinister, and even within the marriage confines, it's pretty sinister because women are property. But there's prostitution, there's human trafficking, there's so the move away from that wasn't necessarily because of prudishness. It might have actually been an enlightened perspective that sex by and large was an act of subjugation, not necessarily an act of mutuality and pleasure.
And really, it's our queer brothers and sisters and siblings who've saved marriage, at least for me, because now marriage has been queered. Otherwise, I would just say, let's just flush the whole thing down the toilet. Why do we need marriage in the first place? Given how corrupt it is as a system. But now we can think of marriage in lots of different ways. And that's good news.
Amen to that, honey. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, with all that, how does that change then? So when we enter into the Christmas and Advent season as progressive Christians, when we hear this narrative again, when we see the nativity, how do we now recommunicate that in a new way? And, in a sense, I guess, compared to our background, reclaim it in a way.
I was just going to ask, I would love to hear from you three men, the three wise men that I get to be in this podcast with. How does it change for you? Like how there's Joseph is in the story in a lesser place in the story. So like, where do you find yourselves in that story?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, meditating on it, praying on it, conversing about it for many years. And there's so many layers. One is it was an extremely important, I experienced a revival of Mary and this story, or a renewal as it relates to the sacred feminine, and seeing her very, very differently in the way the story should be told, very differently, which then allows me to see Joseph very differently, allows and invites me to see Joseph very differently, in that, we talk about male-female relationships in whatever construct, marriage, parent-child, sibling, whatever it is, as somehow equal, but we're still different. I grew up hearing that, where it's like we're equal, but we're different, with the subtext of, men are still better, boys are still better. Now the kind of the equality thing is very much important, but the different part is like, there are things that the sacred feminine, that women bring into possibility, that the masculine, that the maleness just cannot. But, Joseph, he's not left behind, which is an important thread. Women aren't trying to get rid of men. Women have an important place. I mean, really the pinnacle of divine enlightenment, visioning, all the rest is there. And men kind of have this important supporting role. The story isn't about us. The breakthroughs aren't about us, but we benefit from them. Being alongside, taking care of tasks. Not that women can't take care of those same tasks, but while you're around, be useful. That's a really different way of approaching the story and approaching gender relationships, moving forward. And it's led to some, some very disorienting processes for me, because it's not at all how I was raised to be. And I'm not sure this makes sense to anybody unless you've had these same internal struggles and tug of wars.
I think for me, the feminine presence was never something I struggled with. I mean, I was raised by women, so women have always been authority in my life. And, Joseph not being in the picture, I didn't have a dad in the picture, so it was like, that's par for the course. I could relate to that. But I think that the narrative was always surrounded around, for me, from a theological perspective, was that Mary needed to be a virgin to break the Adam line and start a new line from God who is male. So it was always, for me, centered around God's perfect maleness as opposed to Adam's broken maleness, and Mary simply being a vessel for that. So the shift comes in, number one, my ideas of who God is, and then what salvation is, and what Jesus's role was in all that, and then leaving space for, there's all these other things that are happening right now that aren't about Jesus, that are about the setting that Jesus enters And just reading, again, going back to what we talked about in the beginning, just reading the surface of the accounts and then rereading them, it is undeniable that a feminine presence is the building blocks of that setting. I know that just became easy to fall into and accept because I could relate.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Jeff, around, women just always playing that major piece of my life. And so that was never the thing for me. I think for me, it goes back to sort of what we were talking about earlier about the destruction of these systems of needing maleness in any form to bring forth newness, new vision, new purpose, whatever. For me, I focus on that a lot because with this means all the expectations, all of the status quo, all of the boxes we are to fit into are destroyed. They are broken. There is a messiness to birth. There is a messiness to the pains of birth. Like we sing Silent Night as if Mary is just like, having a baby. But from what I've heard, honey, it's nothing like that. And so I think that there's a major invitation in this idea that not only does God trust us, and mostly trust women, but that the new plans and the new visions in which we are to bring forth with God will always be messy, will always bring forth pain and struggle. And I think that that's important for us to always keep before us. As we continue in this conversation around what does this mean for us into the future, that is something that we always have to hold on to. That when we are partnering with the divine, when we are in partnership, you can bet that whatever we are to move into is going to come with some pain. And yet we are trusted.
Yeah. And those sacramental elements of water and blood,
yeah,
they're present in the birth long before the Last Supper.
That's right.
But that's not part of the story often. We go right to, the end of Jesus's life when we think of those sacramental elements, rather than the very beginning of his life, which is in the struggle of his mother giving birth and entrance into the world from the womb through water and blood. That's how it happens. It's very messy. But what's interesting is often when you talk about it in this way, there's like this ickiness factor, like this, there's shame around it. There's shame around bleeding and for women, and there's shame around birth. Like, it has to happen in these sterile rooms attended to by the sterile medical professionals. And even though, yes, we've come a ways in more modern times towards, trying to maybe bring forward some of the more ancient practices around birth with midwives and doulas. And we're still, as women, rarely talk about these things, which is an essential part of every human being's existence.
But have we really come that far? Like
right.
within Christianity, we revel in the violence of Jesus' death on the cross. And then they pierce his side, blood and water flow, and we're fine with that. We practically bathe in that.
So
we sing songs. We sing songs
Right.
about blood.
We're not singing songs about Mary's, vagina,
right.
but we are. And I read something, and I wish I remembered where, so I could put it in the show notes. Maybe I'll try to find it. But it was a commentary from a feminist lens, and it was talking about how the symbolism of, a cut to the side of Jesus in his side is reminiscent of a vagina and the water and blood flowing, and talking about how that can be interpreted as an allusion towards birth. But why, when we have a birth story already there, ready to go?
Right. The sacramental. I mean, there is no more sacramental essence than the birth waters and the birth blood. That is the essence of creation.
Did you ever see Patch Adams?
Of course.
I think so.
We didn't. It was okay movie. It's pretty like whatever. Okay, some people love it. Like it's held in high regard by some, of course. But there's a scene where he's giving a tour to doctors in the gynecological building or whatever, and he creates two legs at the entrance of the door, and then comes out from the door between the legs. And I'm thinking, why can't that be an Advent decoration for a church?
Exactly. It's just so amazing to have this conversation with men, because this is usually, it feels like it's like talk that has to be segregated somehow. But to have the Christmas conversation include, menstrual blood and sex, all of these things that are part of how we come into the world. Forget virginity. Like that's just why are we focused on that? Let's talk about birth, the flesh and blood experience of giving birth, and the flesh and blood experience of holding a baby for the first time, the experience of realizing the weight that's on the shoulder of those who choose to parent in whichever form they choose to parent, whether it's through adoption or through fostering a child, or through actually having a biological child, whatever it is. That is the Christmas story, right there. That's the message. And to diminish all of that into like the story of Mary had to be a virgin in order so that we could start this new line or whatever, or so that she could be pure enough to hold God in her. Like, that is so not the point of the story ever. I don't know. This Advent and Christmas, I hope we bloody it up a bit in the most creative and beautiful way.
Yeah, I mean the level of ludicrousness of that should help us maybe understand with a shake of the head how somebody can lose an election and say they won. It's to be able to do that sort of mental absurdity, to believe in mental absurdities, logical fallacies, and so on and so forth. This is in the mix of just, that's ludicrous. That's a completely ludicrous narrative. And it's fueled so much, and it's still part of the mainstream thinking and teaching and preaching. And so I'm glad we're doing a little bit to make some cracks. And hopefully anybody who's thinking about doing some preaching this Advent and Christmas season start talking about blood and birth, and watch Call the Midwife.
Christmas viewing recommendations from Rajeev. We've really missed the boat on a lot of potential meaningful celebrations around this time of year, or just in general. I mean, obviously we can go through, we talk about all the time that centering the male narrative does everyone a disservice. It does the church a disservice. It does males a disservice. It does everyone a disservice. And coming up with new ways to create, why did we stop? Like it's like we have the sacraments and we haven't become clever enough or motivated enough to come up with new. Yeah, we get it. The bread and the blood of Jesus. Like, there's got to be more than that. Oh, we'll throw in baptism. We'll give you some water too. But it's really astounding how our ritual is so intertwined with the biblical narrative, and we haven't given ourselves the space to incorporate our current life into sacraments that we have.
Exactly. Because most of the rest of our life is rooted in shame. We have lacked the ability to give people language to celebrate moments of their lives, or at least process moments of their lives that are transformational. We have no right. By right, I mean like a right, an act. When you become, when you hit puberty, we have nothing to help young people transfer into this new way of being and talking about it in a way that is affirming to their bodies, that is affirming to their identities, we lose all of that. We have no way to affirm someone in their first sexual experiences and to allow them to process in healthy ways. And so it is rooted in secrecy often and shame. But especially in those formative years, we have lacked the ability to help young people and ourselves talk about some of the things that we're talking about today that are so important and so beautiful. So much of it has been laced with secrecy and shame and silence. And I think that especially in this time, again, as Rajeev's invited you during Advent and Christmas, what would it look like for us to invite people to talk about in church or in spaces? What was it like to give birth to your child? What was it like to have those first experiences? Gather your friends. So what was it like to have sex for the first time? Not in a weird bro-y way, but like legitimate question with open, honest dialogue. I mean, these are the important things that we have failed to talk about clearly. And I think that this conversation has just really reminded me of how important these conversations are and how very few spaces there are to actually have them.
I love that, Casey. Absolutely. And how Christmas is really, Advent is all about waiting, right? And waiting. Why? So that yearning and that desire grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And then Christmas is the moment that it happens. We could, if we wanted to use a queer lens, we could say that's the climactic moment. That's the climax of the whole encounter. The whole experience is Christmas with this birth of this child. Yeah, and it made me think about some theology that my co-pastoring partner, Reverend Elizabeth Griswold, a few years ago, she gave birth to her second child, and she came back, and her first sermon included a reframing of the communion sacrament, because she said in her breastfeeding, which anybody who's out there and has breastfed a baby, it hurts so bad. Your nipples bleed. It takes so long to get it, and it's like such a process to actually feel like you're in a synergetic relationship with this child, like the way the milk comes down, and like when the baby starts crying, you feel the milk come down, and then you need to get to your baby immediately so that you're not like leaking all over the place. And then, the latching, the 24/7 kind of rhythm to it. It's just an intense experience. And so when she said the words, "This is my body broken for you," she almost couldn't finish that sentence, because that's exactly what it feels like when you're a breastfeeding mother. This is my body broken for you, to this like helpless, hungry infant who came from your body and now is nourished by your body. I mean, there's theology in that. There's like so much theology in the experience of birthing and nourishing a newborn child. You rarely read theologies around any of that, even though it's, I think in many ways, at least as far as a Christmas story goes, it's intended to be the crux of the Christian message.
Right. And I would imagine for so many women out there, all it needs to be is spoken. And then that opens a floodgate for people. Like, I mean, obviously I never breastfed, but every step of the way alongside my wife, and she has a small frame, and she was carrying 2 children, and then as you're talking about that, Bonnie, I just remember like late nights waking up in the middle of the night, and her balancing both kids and trying to just like so it was never like, at least I have this side to work on, but it was just constant. It was this real, never ending. And I know, again, I don't understand, but I did get tired just watching, just like, what can I do? I don't know, how to help. And I know that, that's such I only can imagine that that's such a powerful thing, that if during that process she had heard Christmas framed like that, how, I don't know, maybe a moment of relief that would be. Or even affirmation. I imagine that there's many people out there just thinking that, but oh no, that's silly because, I've never heard it before.
Well, when you're breastfeeding, in public, you're told to, like, there's a room for that, or go cover up or whatever.
It's been sexualized.
It's sexualized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's, yeah.
And I mean, just to get even more fleshy, just the whole fluids. Like breast milk is a life-giving fluid. And, mothers who are nursing, if they do leak, like in the workplace or at the mall or whatever, it's like this, let's, hide the fact that, the nectar of life is oozing from my bosoms. It's like, we should all be like, wow, it should be a moment of awe and reverence and respect rather than something that we expect folks to run to the restroom and cover up like it's not happening somehow. And even, Bonnie, you talked about menstruation. Even, that blood is holy blood. It is because of that blood we all exist. And I mean, the fact that we, treat it like some sort of like disease, plague that's upon us, it's so messed up. How did we get here? And talking about the biblical narrative, when I try to look at the biblical narrative with fresh eyes, it really does treat all of this as holy. We just, through our whatever, have turned it into something that's impure.
We've done that with so many things.
Well, I mean, I think that's a solid starting place for hopefully an ongoing conversation for those of you listening during the holidays. Bring this up at the dinner table, see how people respond. These are worthy conversations, and I think that if those of you who are in ministry or a part of a church that are listening to this, I think your church needs a voice that says, hey, what about this lens? What about this view of where we're at? And if you're not, that's fine too. Hopefully we can help start the reframing process. And when we talk about the holiday season, I mean, we've had some good, if I don't say so myself, some good holiday episodes. But man, I think this conversation is one for the books to really remember and keep in mind as kind of we move forward through the season, and recognizing that there's a place in the story for everyone.
And there's some powerful feminine icons around Christmas that I would, maybe there's a way we can somehow share some of that with our listeners. Like there's some beautiful pictures from the Middle Ages of like Mary's breast milk squirting into the mouths of the apostles. These are things that somehow throughout time, like they're not okay. That should be in the bad section or whatever. But there's imagery and iconography that's available to us to help us reframe these stories, I think. And we can maybe share that somehow.
Kind of off the cuff as we're talking about this. I mean, if, Bonnie, you have some particular in mind, maybe we can do something on our, right now, Facebook and Instagram are probably our primary things that we can do like an advent calendar of feminine views throughout the month of December, and just kind of put that out there. So yeah, if you're listening to this, it's already past the 1st of December, but go to our Instagram and Facebook pages and we'll share. Is image a day? Is that too much, or should we do like?
Now I have a whole folder of images.
Okay, perfect. All right, then we're doing it right now. Image a day through December to honor the feminine during this Advent season, and so follow us there, Facebook and Instagram. You can check in the show notes at reddingcast.com/192, where we'll have all that. Before we get into our segment. Any other final thoughts on this particular subject before we move on?
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you all. I mean, really, like Jeff was saying, what do I do? You know, like there's not a lot for men to do when it comes to the actual creation of humanity, but change the diapers, make the food, take care of, you know, there's a lot to do, but there's something about mother and child that needs to, I think, remain the center point, at least for the times that we live in this story.
Right. But I mean, Bonnie, as you say that, that's a sacrament for men. Like our culture expects us to do, to accomplish, to take the most important jobs, and a moment for us to step outside of that. I mean, that's what a sacrament or a ritual is, right? You step outside of the reality you live in for something a little bit more divine. You know, what's more divine than that, than the patriarchy to take the back seat for a little bit? Well, let us know what you think. You can add your voice to this particular conversation by commenting in the show notes at irenicast.com/192. In the show notes, you'll find relevant links and a complete list of all the other ways to add your voice to the conversation, including our Facebook and Instagram, where we'll be posting our version of an advent calendar, which would be pretty awesome. And if you haven't already, please consider joining our email list. Joining our list is the best way to keep updated on all things Irenicast, including our next intersections that will be taking place Thursdays, February 3rd through March 10th. So please stay tuned to the show and to that email list, because we're going to be having some information coming quickly on that. On how you can get involved, and some more description on that. So again, all that information can be found at the link to the show, irenicast.com/192. On the other side of the music, we're going to be playing another brand new segment called Yuck or Yum. And we're going to see who has weird tastes in things, and hopefully normalize it. I don't know. Just join us on the other side. We'll see you there. All right, we are on the other side of the music for the debut of Casey's Yuck or Yum, the segment where we each share something that perhaps the general public might find a little displeasing.
Only if they're stupid.
Yes, only if they're stupid. And then we are going to hear the thoughts of our other hosts and either, plead our case or win over converts for the things that we have adopted into our life that may seem strange. Casey, is that an accurate description of what your thoughts were in regarding this segment?
Absolutely.
All right then. So we're going to I'm just looking at the screen in front of me, and Bonnie, we're going to start with you because I said so.
Because you're in charge.
That's right.
My probably something that others wouldn't think is that great, and I love it. In fact, I just bought some yesterday because they're having their Black Friday sale early, is this grain beverage called Postum. And it's from my Adventist days, my Seventh-day Adventist days, because you're not allowed to drink coffee because of the caffeine. Everybody has this hot drink called Postum, and I like it. It's good. Most people hate it.
Where does it come from? Yeah, like what is it?
What is it ingredients?
I'll see if I can find the link. It comes from...
Remember the last episode with the yard leaves? And it's basically where it comes from.
Are you yucking her yum? You're a yucker in this occasion.
I'm neutral. I'm hardcore neutral on Postum.
Okay, so I put the their website in the chat, and I'm curious to see what you all think of it.
The first ever blind reactions for the okay, so I click the link. Postum, worry-free. 3 simple natural ingredients can put your mind at ease. Roasted wheat bran, wheat, and molasses.
It's so good.
So it's just blended up raisin bran or
Yeah,
something like
kinda.
that.
It makes a delicious coffee replacement. Do you see that? No preservatives, no caffeine, no GMOs. Relax with a custom postum any time of day.
Bonnie, I mean, I get it. Like someone can like something and, this, blended up wheat drink or whatever. But to say, to have the audacity to say you can replace your coffee with it is horribly offensive to me. They have decaf, right? Do the Adventists know this that exists, or are they just fine with blending up wheat and drinking it?
This should be in the packet, the post heart surgery packet for people, where the doctors are like, no more caffeine for you. Your heart is very caffeine sensitive. But here, I have this gift for you.
Okay.
To add to your medication regimen.
Just to give more fuel to this fire, I prefer postum over coffee.
Wow.
So
when you get your next shipment, we should all come over for a cup of postum.
You can't, as long as you don't. If you're going to say bad things about it, then I'm not going to give it to you.
I will definitely say bad things about it.
You
Like the
haven't even
picture,
tried
I'm looking
it.
at this website. The picture is just wheat fields. That is not like, ooh, that quenches my thirst. That's what I want in the morning.
I challenge our listeners
goodness.
to try a delicious cup of postum and then see what they think, really.
Right.
And I bet they'll be on my side.
And again, pointing to our last episode again, this is true love, folks. Someone who prefers postum to coffee. I love them.
Oh my goodness! All right, well, yes. In all love, I am officially yucking your yum. I disagree.
I am neutral until
you try it.
That's right.
That's the appropriate stance. Thank you, Casey. I know I could count on you.
I am judging this book by its cover, and it is nasty.
It is pretty bad.
All right, we'll all have a cup of postum. Maybe if we, next time we meet together.
All right, I'll give it a try, but
I have mocha postum.
Not promising.
That's all I have left till my next shipment gets here. But
hold on, you have chocolate has caffeine, so it defeats the whole purpose.
It's not chocolate.
What is it made of? You can't call it mocha if it's not chocolate.
It is chocolate. Let me see. All I know is it tastes good.
No, it doesn't.
It's postum cocoa.
Right. Postum cocoa.
Wait, so
there's coffee flavor, there's postum cocoa, and then there's original flavor. And I always get at least one or two of each once a year, and it lasts me for an entire year.
There's coffee flavored postum to replace coffee.
It's delicious.
That sounds like okay. We should probably move on because I'm getting old.
Jeff's like coming unglued here.
You wanted.
Oh goodness.
Let's move on.
No, this is a great segment. Bonnie, I mean, we're on the same page on so many things, and I love and respect your opinion on so many things. So,
I challenge you to try.
But this is not one of them.
You might change your mind.
I'm going to try it.
Mind. You might like it, and then you can drink it late at night.
I can't guarantee the open I'll try.
We will post a video to our social media channels when this happens.
Yes.
Okay,
we'll go good. Live.
All right. All right. So, Rajeev. Wait. First of all, so we have two neutrals and one yuck. Is that how we're judging this? But as we move on,
Rajeev, you're kind of a flip flopper on this.
It just doesn't taste like anything. I mean, it tastes like dirt.
Right, he said neutral to start. Now he's saying yuck.
Yeah, I mean, it tastes like dirt. But
okay,
I mean,
so two yucks and one neutral.
Dirt's not that bad. Dirt's not that bad. You know.
What's your
if you've
quirk?
ever played me
or whoever?
Yeah,
yours.
You're next.
Right, so I'm going to set this up a little bit. All of us have had I love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Love them.
Peanut butter on pizza.
No. This isn't the segment on blasphemy. And we've all crunched chips, right?
Why did you take mine?
Right?
Go ahead.
We've all crunched chips. Okay, I'm not taking yours. I'm going a step further. So growing up as a kid in Tamil Nadu, which is where my mom's from, there are these small fish that get deep fried in some seasoned oil, and you add them to a rice dish or whatever. But we'd have like these pots full of them, these dried fried fish. In the U.S., we would get smelts. I don't know if that's what we got in India, but they're called smelts. Delicious, salty, crunchy, a little fishy. And I would take those and put them in my peanut butter jelly sandwiches rather than potato chips. And it's like next level scrumptiousness. Because, again, you get the salty, crunchy thing in there, plus you get a little bit of that fleshy fish. Ugh, so good.
Okay, so here's the deal. Like, I am not a fish person at all, but because I'm down with that crunchiness of the chips and the PB&J, I would be at least intrigued to try, so I'll give it a yum.
All right, I got to find some.
Okay.
And I'll ask my mom how to fry them up, what to put in the oil.
See, I would rather wait till your mom's here because I don't trust you to do this.
Okay, she's coming in February.
Yeah, I'd rather wait.
All right.
I can't think of anything more disgusting.
I'd rather wait.
Honestly. I don't want to try any. I don't even want to be in the room when you make it.
That's
I'm
fine.
glad I didn't know that about you until now.
That might have been a deal breaker, apparently.
That sounds so gross.
We're not going to miss you while we're frying our smelts. You go somewhere else.
So clearly, I'm a yuck.
I'm of two minds. Like the flavor profile sounds good to me. Like those are all things that are in, Thai food. You have a peanut sauce, you have fish sauce, you have different all that stuff and the sweetness of the jelly. I get all that. My only hang up is the crunch. I don't get crunchy peanut butter for a reason, not because it's the different taste, because I don't want crunch in my peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Are you serious?
Yeah, you got what?
Wait, you're crunchy
Yes.
peanut butter people? I am not crunchy. I am smooth all the way, 100%.
Well, hang on, before I go into more criticism, do you have like dental issues where your gums are sensitive and it's painful to have crunchy peanut butter?
No, I do not.
So it's not a health condition.
Why would I want something half done?
That's not
like smooth out the peanut butter or don't do it. If I want peanuts, I'll have peanuts.
Smooth out the peanut butter or don't do it.
A smooth peanut butter person. But the texture issue is not enough to make me say yuck for this particular scenario. So I will go with the yum.
All right.
Wow.
So
I feel like we're learning a lot from each other.
When my mom comes over in February, we'll find some smelts or similar fish and we'll do it up.
And then you're going to be like, Bonnie, get me that Poston, please, quick.
To wash it down with the Poston.
I feel like we really should actually do it all on the same day. We should.
But apparently I need to bring some smooth peanut butter because I'm not going to get the good stuff.
Man, don't bring that peanut butter with chemicals in there.
Bring whatever peanut butter you want.
Just
what do you mean with
just
chemicals?
Peanuts and salt. That's it.
What?
Yeah.
No. Wait, you're not the one. You don't buy that stuff with the oil on top and you have to like stir.
Yes.
Oh my God.
See,
That's
I draw
the
the
good
line.
stuff.
I draw the line.
That's the good stuff.
Just creamy.
You buy the stuff that is in a bunker somewhere waiting for a nuclear war.
Skippy's my brand. Creamy. It's delicious. I don't want to mix. I don't want to do work. It's all done for you, and it's smooth and delicious.
Skippy's a dessert.
Yes, exactly. Why would I? Why didn't I don't want some like. I almost would rather drink your Postum drink there than have that.
All right,
nasty old.
Bring your own damn peanut butter.
I will. This is good to know because now I know if we ever have a peanut butter jelly sandwich party, I'll bring my own. Oh my goodness. Okay. Casey, you're up. What's your yuck or yum?
So the issue is now that because I was going to go with peanut butter and jelly and Doritos. But because we already sort of did a PB&J thing, I will go with, in my house, there's another person who lives here who loves everything to be heated, if we're going to have leftovers. But there is something that I refuse. Oh, this is it. There is something that I refuse to reheat that I love to eat cold as leftovers, and that is spaghetti. I love cold spaghetti, and then I like to top it with cream of corn.
Oh, you crossed the line there, man.
Yeah.
What? What is that? That's some Appalachian creation right there. No offense to anybody from Appalachia. Creamed corn on cold spaghetti?
Oh, it is delightful.
With this tomato sauce or just the pasta?
Yeah, it's like I have normally I'll just throw my sauce and my pasta together, and put it in the Tupperware, and then when I'm ready to have it again, I'll just throw it in a bowl, get that cream of corn out, and even if it's warm, like if the spaghetti's warm, I'll still have it with cream of corn. But yeah, that's how I like to have spaghetti, cold or warm.
All right, we're gonna have to have this yuck or yum party for real, because I'm intrigued.
I think it sounds delicious.
I'm intrigued.
I'm a yum. I want to try that now.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to hold off on judgment. I mean, the cold, hot. I'm kind of like, I might actually dig it hot. It's the cold piece that I'm a little like, I don't know.
You had me at like cold pasta. I prefer to heat it up, but that's not gross to me. Like I'll still eat it if it's a little cold in the center and I didn't microwave it enough or whatever. That's fine. But then you follow up with the cream corn thing. Like I need some clarification on this process. So you have your spaghetti in the fridge. You take out the Tupperware container. You start to eat it, and you're like, "Oh wait, this needs something." So you go, to the pantry, and you're looking, and you're like, "Huh? Well, I have some cream corn."
Not a
and then you just
it's a where is the cream of corn? And then
so you just bust open the can,
put some cream of corn on
and
there,
then pour it on. Also cold.
Yeah,
you don't heat that up. It's
Why
just
would
straight
you?
from the can.
And
Okay, hold on. How did this start? Did somebody do this to you as a child?
Yes, yeah.
And so you grew up with this.
That's right. A little Parmesan cheese.
This wasn't
Kraft
you.
Parmesan cheese. Yeah.
This wasn't you deciding, like, as an independent person in your own place. Like, I would like to make a delicacy. Okay, the fact that you grew up with, there's somebody else to blame.
That's it. Hey, this is a yum, man.
And then
this
you grew up loving it. That's awesome. All right. So I got a suggestion. When we do our yuck or yum party, I think we should have a cold version of this.
Yes.
I think we should do a Jeff version, which is a microwave heat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I actually like to heat leftover pasta in the oven because then you get a little bit of that crispy texture and
Sure.
Crunch.
Yeah.
to
like
do some of that. So
Yep.
we'll do 3 versions of it.
I love that.
Well, let's be clear. The Jeff version is not microwaving. The Jeff version is I will make some fresh pasta and I will toss it in some homemade tomato sauce and I will.
How about some homemade cream corn? That would be delicious.
That would be delicious.
Do that as well.
Why don't you just use the Skippy version of pasta sauce?
Ragu.
Oh, I wish everybody could see Jeff's face right now.
It's okay, Rajeev. It's okay. I
The
can't.
war has just begun.
We just pizza and peanut butter. It's good to know that we are. All right. Well, I feel like this is going to be a little bit anticlimactic because my thing, and it's because it's the only thing that pops out when it's a yuck or yum. The thing that I get criticized the most for within my circle is I will 100% of the time take black licorice over any other kind of licorice. I love it.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm with you. Yum all the way.
Gross.
I love black licorice.
Thank you, Bonnie.
In fact, I
so
want
good.
some right now.
I mean that is licorice, right?
Yeah.
The red stuff is it's
red vines. But
concoction.
colloquial, like we all like.
Yeah, but I'm a Twizzlers guy. I like Twizzlers. I don't like red vines. I definitely don't like black licorice or licorice. I like me some Twizzlers. So I'm going yuck. Just straight up yuck.
Yuck. I feel like I this was very anticlimactic. It's just black licorice. It's just boring. Trying to think of some other weird combinations.
Do you like it
put
like
put
really
some cream
strong,
corn on there.
really strong black licorice? Because there's various kinds. You know, there's like the really sugary kind, and then there's like that very licorice tasting black licorice.
There you go. Get the kind with the big hole in the middle.
Either way.
Cut off the ends and sip cream corn through your black licorice.
That sounds disgusting. Although that's why I prefer the Red Vine brand of black licorice, because you can turn it into a straw. You can't do that with Twizzlers.
Yes, you can.
No, you can't. It's solid.
No.
Twizzlers are solid.
No.
Just
yes.
the ends are.
You don't know Twizzlers. Twizzlers are solid. Look it up. If I'm wrong, I don't know.
You will have to buy him 10 packs of Twizzlers.
That's right. I will buy you a pack of Twizzlers if you think that Twizzlers are hollow, because they are not. Well, while you're looking it up.
I don't think do you eat that much licorice?
Twizzler twists are made by pushing a delicious blend of ingredients through a special rotating nozzle, giving the candy its iconic twist and, drumroll please, a hollow center.
Do they have hollow center?
Yes.
Am I wrong
Look,
here?
dude, I'm a Twizzlers guy. I know this.
I apologize.
Okay.
You're right. I
It's all right.
stand
I accept
corrected.
your apology, Jeff.
All right. I'm glad you accept it. And as a result of that, nothing changes except for our mutual respect for one another continues.
And I'd like to add you sipping cream corn through black licorice to our Yuck Yum episode.
Well, or make a fork out of black licorice and eat spaghetti and... All right. Sorry for ruining the party with something simple as black licorice, but it's delicious. Any other honorable mentions? Any other nasty things y'all do that we should be aware of before we continue to work together?
Bonnie, I
All
thought you were
right,
going to talk about your hippie dust.
What?
Hippie dust.
What? Is
plot
this a
thickens.
party that
What
we're
is
invited
this?
to, or?
Let's say what do you want me to do with that? It's been called hippie dust by Sela or something. I put nutritional yeast on popcorn.
Oh, that's fine.
It's delicious. And everybody around me is like, "Oh, it stinks. It's your hippie dust." Whatever. Cuz I don't know. I'll probably, if we go to the movie and I get popcorn, I'll bring some with me in my bag.
She does, in a little
I do.
Ziploc. Yep.
Ain't nothing wrong
Keep
with
your
that.
mask on. It stinks.
I was hoping for
It
something
cannot
more when you
stink
said
worse
hippie dust.
than peanut butter fish sandwiches. That's all I have to say. The
I'll
smell
give-
of that in and of itself is enough to make me throw up.
I'll give you that.
All right. Well, with all that being said, that will do it for us this week. If you enjoy Irenicast and would like to join the work that we are doing, please consider donating to our PayPal link at irenicast.com/PayPal. We're committed to keeping the show for free for listeners, but there are costs involved and your financial support helps. That's irenicast.com/PayPal. Irenicast is also a nonprofit organization, so your donations are tax deductible. You can always also support the show by simply making sure you follow the show on whatever podcasting platform you are listening on. And if it allows it, please leave a rating and review. We'd love to hear from you. So for this week, I'm Jeff.
I'm Bonnie.
I'm Casey.
And this is Rajeev.
Thanks for joining the conversation.